Welcome. I'm so glad you could join us today for this research and practice brief. I'm Samantha Goldman, a GRA for CIDDL, and I'm joined by Dr. Zhao, who's going to introduce himself.
All right, thanks, Sam. I'm Yong Zhao. I'm a Foundation Distinguished Professor at the University of Kansas, and also a professor in educational leadership at the School of Education at University of Melbourne in Australia.
You are all over the world. Can you tell us briefly about some of the places you've been in the last, you've probably been more places in the last month than some people have been in their lifetime, and a little bit about what you've been doing?
Well, I've been visiting a lot of places because during COVID, we did a lot of webinars, conferences, but in March, I was probably in 6 cities in Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, and Brisbane. Then I was just in Madrid and Barcelona and just came back, and I went up to Vancouver, British Columbia. Then I also in the middle, I was in Las Vegas. Most of the places I go was really for presentations or keynote speeches concerning about the future of education and the current pressure schools face. So that's really the main thing, as my research is about that.
Can you tell us more about what your top 3 things that you cover in your presentations are? What when we're talking about educational change?
Well, first thing is that education cannot be improved, but it has to be transformed. We've been doing a lot of tiny improvements over the past several decades. We've changed the curriculum, we've changed the pedagogy, we've changed the assessment, but we have not transformed the schools, and education quality has not truly been improved. Neither has the achievement gap been closed. So that's the first thing. The second thing, with the rise of ChatGPT and other artificial intelligences, we truly have come to a point that we have to rethink about what we want to teach our students, what students should learn, what students should be. And that is probably a strong message I think I want everybody to hear. In the age of smart machines, we cannot become machines. Human beings have become more human. And the third point is really a lot about what we have learned from COVID, but schools have forgotten. We did a lot of innovations. Teachers were innovative, students were innovative, schools were innovative, but all those innovations seems to have been swept away when schools return to normal. I'm encouraging all of us, including parents, to rethink about what we learned and what we can do differently rather than just return to pre-COVID.
And if I understand correctly, you just had a book come out on educational change and what we can do to kind of support what needs to be done, right?
Yeah, it's a book I co-authored with our dean, Rick Ginsburg. It's really called Duck and Cover. And we talk about how to confront and correct dubious practices in education. It's by Teachers College Press. The main idea is that education has been driven by a lot of dubious ideas. For example, called kindergarten readiness. College and career readiness. All of this sound really good, but they're actually quite meaningless. Because life is so different, the age is so uncertain, and the time is just unknown. We have to be more practical and more realistic to understand our students. So this book was really confronting a lot of those, seem to be popular ideas, but they are really not meaningful.
Interesting. Your research is so innovative, and just thinking about how education looks. How can we better prepare teachers, related service personnel, leadership personnel, and the like to teach in this environment, or to prepare the learners of the future in this environment?
Well, I think there's a lot of things we can do, but I think the first thing is to be honest, just to say right now, the low morale in schools is a problem. Schools are under a lot of pressure. Schools themselves as entities don't have enough staff, enough teachers. Teachers have to work so hard to deal with students who are constantly disengaged, have different things. But I think the big shift to change that is to put our students at the center, not the curriculum, not the assessment. If we treat every student as individual human beings with strength and focus on their strength and their passion, and make sure our students are the owners of their own learning so they can drive learning, and teachers and schools rather become support. Teachers become, I would say, coaches, mentors instead of teachers. Because now with all this technology, learning or acquisition of information is easy. Development of morality, of ethics, of creativity, curiosity is hard. But those all require students to truly develop a personalized learning, as well as trying to identify problems and solve problems. We have to help our students not just to learn known answers to known questions, but to solve unknown problems. And that starts with identifying problems. But we need to accept another thing, that is not every student should have the same requirements. We may have some basic requirements, but overall, everybody should have a jagged profile of competencies. That means you'll be great in some areas, you'll not be good in other areas, but also should be driven by passion. So schools should be passion-driven and strength-based.
Can you give an example from either your research or one of your expeditions, something you've seen, something you've been a part of what this actually looks like? Because these ideas are so foreign to a lot of us. How does that actually look like? What paints the picture?
That's actually quite amazing. I'm surprised. You said it's so foreign. Well, let me just give an example of there's a school in Australia, which kind of took my idea and built another school within a school, and they called the studio school. So the students were going in, I think ninth graders and above, they would go in and they would work with teachers on what they would like to be doing. Some people writing novels, some people are really playing the piano, some people are doing paintings, but then in all this process, they're aiming to come up with a product. And so in the process, you come up with a product is hard. So they would need advice, they would need support from teachers, and there's really no structured time, structured class, but students really go in there working independently or collaboratively with teachers, with their classmates, and trying to come up with authentic products that would mean something to them. So it's passion-driven. It's also strength-based. So you do not force them to say, you have to pass this exam. Instead, you're looking at their authentic products, a novel or a design, or some other solutions to some other big problems.
Oh, interesting. Does that translate to our personnel preparation programs? Could you do something like that in the university higher ed level as well?
Of course, I think anywhere it's possible. If you prepare teachers, a teacher needs to know, what's my job. Right now we prepare teachers to teach a curriculum to drive students to pass exams or to give lectures. But really, ultimately, if you treat teachers as coach, the first they need to understand is human beings. So when a coach look at a person to say, okay, what are you good at? What are you interested in? And what do you need in order to become even better? So I would love to say our teacher education program, starting with problems, how to work with other people. And then the other knowledge, they can come in. You read psychology, you read sociology, you read about social context of education. And I think you would change the program as you treat every future teacher or teacher, a pre-service teacher, as an individual to say, what are you going to become and how we're going to work together? I think that is the beginning of a good education.
I love the idea. I think we've heard a lot about personalized learning and personalizing learning for our younger humans, but I love the idea of looking at it and asking our teachers, what are you going to become and what are you going to do? What questions do you think we're going to be asking in the future of education, of higher education preparation programs in technology innovation?
Well, I think it's the big question we need help is, are you helping each student to become a problem finder, a problem solver, a creative individual who will be able to survive and thrive in the age of smart machines? Are you helping them to make good use of artificial intelligence and other technology to better themselves instead of trying to be replaced by them? Also, are we helping our students to become better human beings? So, how we help others to become better human beings so we can have a more peaceful and prosperous society.
Having had the pleasure and just experience of finishing your course this semester, one thing I know you focus a lot on is that idea of the side effects of learning. Can you talk a little bit about the implications of how we're currently teaching and some of the side effects that you've seen or that you've experienced, and kind of why personalized learning is helpful and what side effects it kind of helps to minimize?
Well, I mean, if you look right now, the side effects of education is when we keep looking at what works, we forget it can hurt. If you look at our schools today, are we, for example, simple question, are we overemphasizing the instructional outcome? When you teach students in one semester, say, oh, what have you learned? But at the same time, did we ask, what have you learned? You may forget in a few months. What have you learned might have damaged your creativity and curiosity. What you have learned might have get you become more disengaged from schools. So those are the things. Another thing, of course, we kept talking about human growth. We talk about social and emotional well-being, psychological well-being. But are they really experiencing that? If schools put so much pressure, students' social emotional well-being declines, is that good? So I think personalization of learning should really help individual students to say, I am the owner of my learning. I'm self-determined. I will drive this. I understand why I'm learning. And then I will seek help. I think that change is going to be dramatic, for students.
How do you balance, it's a personal question or a question for my own personal needs, how do you balance what needs to be taught in a course, because we have requirements, with this idea of personalizing learning specifically for our pre-service teachers, giving them that opportunity to explore learning, knowing that part of our job is to prepare them to be able to do certain things?
Well, ultimately, a good curriculum should have very small amount of required content, and ultimately, but that's not happening. So at this time, I think if we have teachers, we have schools, they can always do. I think during COVID, all teachers examined the content and discovered the problem did not have to teach as much. So probably you can take a course to say, this is the thing that I have to teach. Now maybe just 1/3 of the content. And then another third, you can say, maybe, we should ask the entire class, what do you guys want to learn? They can negotiate, they can discuss, and they have another third, give to individual students to say, what do you want to do? What would you like to learn? I think it's all possible to make those changes. But of course, the real changes takes a lot more time than what we're talking about.
Are there any specific technologies, any specific resources that you would suggest our teacher educators and our higher ed service provider personnel preparation faculty look at and get into the hands of their future teachers?
Well, I would just think about it. There are so many things online, on TikTok, on YouTube. So I'm not going to say that. If anyone is interested in, we've done over 140 episodes of silver lining for learning. I think we've collected a lot of innovations done by teachers, by school leaders, by scholars, from universities to schools, from the global South countries to global North countries. We got so many in episodes. I would think that would be very interesting. So on YouTube, it's silverliningforlearning.org. You can find them. We're also running on podcast. I think that's very powerful. I co-host that with Christine from Harvard, Punya Mishra from Arizona State University, and Kurt Bunk of Indiana University.
Cool. I love that. I love resources that teach me more and that I can kind of grow from rather than rely on. And then lastly, tell us more about Duck and Cover, because I need to get my hands on that book.
Well, you should. It is a book really of what I call an honest examination of the slogans or practices or policies we believe. So it has a lot to do with what's driving schools now, which to really almost no point of return, and to reshape what matters, in our thinking. So I would hope that you read this book.
I'm gonna try and get a hold of it actually this afternoon. And hopefully I can, because it's gonna make writing this really interesting. It's gonna give some really good insight. Well, thank you so much. My AirPod keeps falling out. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's been a pleasure. And I can't wait to see what comes out next.
All right. Thank you so much. You take care.
You as well.